So after many months of waiting, I finally got to see the Demon Slayer movie, and I actually got to see it in theaters. The first time I've been in one in over a year. But I guess that goes for most people at this point. So I'm going to talk about it spoiler-free for a little bit, and then later on I'll go into spoiler stuff. So first, let me just say that there is a lot of hype on this movie. Like, some of the most hype that there's ever been on a movie, possibly. Like, it's the highest grossing movie in Japan ever, and I think it was also like the fourth highest grossing movie in the world last year or something. And it has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 99% audience score, which was also 100 not too long ago. So with all that being said, is the hype warranted? And just straight up, I don't think it is. But don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean it was bad. It wasn't even close to bad. It was actually a pretty good movie, but I don't think it was like one of the best movies ever, or at least one of the best movies I've ever seen. It wasn't even like the best anime movie I've ever seen. But like I said, it was definitely pretty good. Now, before I go any further, let me just say that I have a very good understanding of the Demon Slayer series. I did a review for season 1 as well as the entire manga on the channel. I'll have the links in the description for those videos if you're curious to hear my thoughts on the series. But as I've said before in those videos, I was always kind of a little confused as to why Demon Slayer is so incredibly popular, at least in Japan. And I thought maybe it just had a lot to do with it being a very clean, paint by numbers, battle manga shonen series. You know, just a very straightforward, very well done, clean series. That, along with its themes and designs, I guess really hit home with the Japanese audience, which led to its crazy explosion in popularity. But as for the movie being so successful, well, I guess a lot of that also has to do with its brilliant marketing strategy. And that goes into what the overall movie is about, which also separates this movie from a lot of other like battle anime movies. And it's that this isn't like an original story or some kind of non-canon event that happens. This is like straight up canon from the manga. This is an entire arc adapted into a 2-hour movie. Now, I'm sure that's been done before, but it's just not very common, at least as far as I know. So given that season 1 was extremely popular and it leaves off with this movie being set up, it only made sense that people would be very eager to see the continuation of the series, but now they just get to see an entire arc adapted into a movie, which makes it completely understandable why it was such a massive hit. And I wish actually more series would do that, at least for like, the smaller arcs, not big long arcs. I don't think they should be adapted into movies. But ultimately, I'm just still mildly confused as to why it's the highest grossing Japanese movie of all time and why it has such extremely high critical and audience reception. But anyway, like I was saying, the movie is pretty good, and the animation, of course, is top notch. There's many sequences of Sakuga, like 80% of the movie is pretty much Sakuga. The only time where the animation is, I'll say, a bit questionable is when the CGI starts coming into play. Without going into spoilers, there's like this goopy stuff that starts coming out of the train, and it looks kind of wonky in comparison to the other stellar animation within the movie. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's certainly noticeable, and it has a sharp contrast from the rest of the movie. But I guess that could just be considered a nitpick. Now, here's another possibly controversial take, and I say that there's a portion of this movie that drags, and it's, I guess, will be considered the second act of the movie when they're all having their dreams. This sequence goes on extremely long. There was some fun sequences here and there for sure, but a lot of it was kind of just dragging on. Aside from that, the stakes are kind of low in this movie. The villain is pretty weak in more ways than one. Also, is it just me, or did Enmu sound like James Charles? And I never really felt like the protagonists were ever really in like danger or even came close to losing, honestly, until the very end, of course. But that was kind of like a twist and completely out of left field, just both for the movie and just for the story in general. But I'm just mainly talking about the Infinity Train aspect of the movie. Aside from the second act dragging, the rest of it had pretty good pacing. Like, this was like a 2-hour movie and it flowed pretty good. And of course, gotta talk about the fight scenes. They're spectacular, at least aesthetically. Choreography, it's kind of like the same thing that you get from Demon Slayer. A lot of named moves, a lot of ambiguous movements to them. Not Not really too much depth or intricacies to it, I'll say, but it looks cool. I'll say that the fighting and choreography really shines at the end of this movie. Like the final fight scene is pretty great. So yeah, I personally give this movie like an 8 out of 10 or something. It was pretty good, and if you like Demon Slayer, I strongly suggest you watch this movie if you can. I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily go out of your way to go to the movies to see it, but you know, when it eventually comes on VOD, I think you should pick it up then. So now I'm gonna go into a little bit of spoiler talk, so if you don't wanna know what's gonna happen in the movie, I suggest you check out now. So the movie adapted everything I thought that it pretty much would from the Infinity Train arc, except I thought the ending was gonna run on a little longer, but it ends just fine, I suppose. Let me just talk about Enmu for a little bit, the main villain of this movie, who is also lower ranked one of the 12 Kazuki. Enmu is a weak villain in more ways than one. He's a very bland, standard villain, and he's weak, you know, on the power scale as well. I mean, he has a pretty interesting ability, you know, like putting you to sleep and whatnot, but Tanjiro overcomes it so fast that honestly, it's not even like an issue, you know, once you get past the first hurdle. But going towards the end of the movie, this is where it really shines. When Akaza shows up and fights Rengoku, which I guess takes place in the last 20-15 minutes of the movie, it's pretty great. Just like 20 minutes of Sakuga pretty much. Great choreography, great soundtrack. It's a very compelling sequence, and maybe this could have been a large part in why the movie was so successful and had such critical acclaim. It's just too bad that the movie is so contained in itself, you know, given that it has to go off the canon of the original manga, and it has to wrap up the arc, you know, by the end of the movie, that you don't really understand who Akaza is, why he's there, or really anything, honestly. I mean, you know Akaza's ranking, but that's pretty much it. And also, Rengoku's death is another thing that makes the ending so great, and another reason why I think they thought adapting the Infinity Train arc was just perfect for a movie. But other than that, everything was fine. You know, there's spotty development on all the characters, not really much for them all to do, and you know, they don't really get too much spotlight. And this is mainly just like the Tanjiro and Inosuke show for the most part, and then Rengoku cleans up at the end. I just would have personally preferred it if maybe they made some movie original sequences to like strengthen Nezuko's sequences, or dare I say even Zenitsu, who I'm not really too fond of, but also maybe even Akaza. He could have possibly benefited from some additional, you know, original sequences. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Demon Slayer Infinity Train movie. Let me know what you guys think about it if you saw it. Are you interested in seeing it? If you haven't, let me know. And if you liked the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.